Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Light Sports Ramble. As always, I am Troy Otradovic. Unfortunately, for the first time in a long time, I am not joined by my co-host, Evan Watallison. As I had stated, Evan and I have real jobs outside of doing the Light Sports Ramble. He had a full-day training. I have some things that are going on at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, so our schedule today was really hectic. And so we were really trying to get a time together to do the Packer preview. So for those of you joining live that were expecting the Packer preview in its full entirety, we are actually going to do that show tomorrow. Evan had said that he was going to try to join in as soon as he can this afternoon. So I'm going to fill some air. Hopefully we've got some live people. And if you want to buzz in and talk to me about Packers Steelers, we can do that. I'm going to give just a little bit of a breakdown of what's going on. Today's practice and Mike McCarthy in his press conference. The Packers injury report right now is longer than a kid's Christmas list. And just when we look offensively, we're not talking about just Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's the biggest speculation. Is he going to play? Is the collarbone healed? If he plays, people are saying they would pick the Packers. If he doesn't play, they would say that they would pick the Steelers. It's all up in the air, and I'm not going to get into my thoughts on that until I'm joined with my co-host, Evan Watallison, and we get into some of the keys to the game. But when I look at the injury report, there's some other key names on this injury report that are going to be very apparent. The first is Eddie Lacy. He was held out of practice. He had hurt his ankle 2 weeks ago, hurt it again against the Cowboys, limped off, missed a little bit of time, went back in the game. The forecast for Sunday is calling for snow. Green Bay Packer football weather. Not that it's going to affect the Steelers, because I live in Pittsburgh, and believe me, it is cold and snowy out here on the East Coast also, or the Northeast if you want to call it that. So the weather isn't going to affect the game plan with the Steelers. They're used to playing at Heinz Field and in the cold weather and in the snow themselves. But what it's going to affect is it's going to affect the running game that the Packers have, especially the way that Eddie Lacy runs. This guy is a powerful back that hits the hole. And in bad conditions especially, having a running back like Eddie Lacy who can get moving forward, churn his legs, and punish defenders, that is the kind of running back that runs really well in these type of conditions. So hopefully Eddie Lacy is just held out of practice and is going to be able to play on Sunday. That in itself could change the outcome of that game. And I'm not taking anything away from James Starks. I think he's done a great job filling in, giving Lacy a breather. Earlier in the year, he had over 100 yards. Starks is more than capable of being that back. He was in the playoff run when they won the Super Bowl. It's just that Eddie Lacy and James Starks bring two different dimensions to that running game. Eddie Lacy hits the hole and goes hard, as does Starks, and he's been finishing his runs this year. I'm going to give him credit for that. But Eddie Lacy is just a big, powerful man, and he will need him if the weather is snowy like they're suggesting on Sunday. And I'll have to say, I know Evan's not here, but he is all jacked up about Sunday because it's his first trip to Lambeau Field. And he's going to be cheering, and hopefully the Packers can pull out a win for him on Sunday when he's there. But also another notable name on that, we're going to the defensive side of the ball. We all know where the Packers defense is right now. This defense is in a state of flux, not stopping people, having a hard time on third down, giving up some big plays, not creating turnovers, getting some pressure on a quarterback, and doing some of those things. So when that all happens, we can play well. We were early in the year, but offensively, the offense was helping that defense by being able to sustain drives, put points on the board. As Evan would always say, they're front runners. When they have a lead, they're able to play very, very well. Now, they stepped up in the second half against the Cowboys, made some plays, and I'm not going to get into that whole debacle. A lot of people say, well, the Cowboys self-inflicted that and the Cowboys fell apart. And I realize that. But they still had to stop the Cowboys when they passed the ball. They got enough pressure on Romo to force the mistake, like I had said last week. A key to that game is going to be to force Romo out of the pocket, keep pressure on him, breathe down his back, and make him force a throw, which he did. The thing that we're going to have a problem with this week, when you look at this injury report, and I'm just going to go down the names. Ryan Pickett, he was limited in practice, but that means that he's still banged up. The biggest name on here, and the news that's coming out, is a significant injury to Johnny Jolly. I was on Twitter before, and I tweeted out a few things, and I watched my timeline, and it seems like this injury could be season-ending. And so I'm not just talking about this game. I'm talking about that Packer defense. If they make the playoffs, that is a big loss in the middle of that line. Him and Raji in the middle are two big boys. And Johnny Jolly was starting to play very well. I had joked a couple rambles ago that, we don't want to see Johnny Jolly dance anymore, but I didn't mean it this way. I didn't mean due to injury. Evan had said he can dance all he wants if he's making plays, and he had been making some plays. Playing very well, disrupting the middle, helping the run game, getting the push up the middle to flush the quarterback to a side in the pocket to allow our outside rush to get there. That is the biggest loss the Packers could have outside of Aaron Rodgers right now. They need Johnny Jolly in the middle, and he's not going to be there. According to Mike McCarthy, it is a significant injury, which is really going to hurt the Packers. And so, with that said, some other notables: Brad Jones, linebacker; Mike Neal; Nick Perry; C.J. Wilson. So all of a sudden, we're looking at some players on defense that would need to step up and actually make some plays that are not participating in practice. And I think the biggest thing with this is going up against a Steeler team that has given up a lot of sacks, and we'll rehash some of these stats tomorrow in the preview. But the Steelers have allowed 41 sacks this year. It's 25th in the NFL. So people are getting to Big Ben, but they're not getting huge pressure, big hits on Big Ben because he's a mammoth of a man to bring down. Those sacks are happening when he's trying to extend the play, the pocket breaks down, and he's moving around a little bit. Getting sacks on Big Ben, you have to work for him. He's not going to go down immediately, so it takes the second wave, sometimes the third wave, to actually bring Big Ben to the ground. And what that does is it tires out your defensive line. You're going to have to stay fresh. And when I look at this list, you got Johnny Jolly out, you got Pickett hurt, David Neal is hurt, C.J. Wilson is hurt. Where's the depth at defensive line going to come from? Are we going to be able to sustain pressure on Big Ben? And I think one of the things with Big Ben, and I'll talk about it when I'm able to chat with Evan, is maybe trying to keep Big Ben in the pocket. Because when he rolls out and extends that play, that's when he's the most dangerous. We're going to have some good gap control. And by revamping the defensive line with new players playing, that could become a big problem on Sunday. But getting back to an update on Aaron Rodgers, most people that are listening are probably Twitter followers, and so you've probably already heard the news that he's still not medically cleared. And I was reading, Mike McCarthy didn't name a starter. They're going to wait till tomorrow like they did last week, wait for the evaluation on Friday. He looks very good in practice. really has some zip on the ball. We all know that Aaron Rodgers wants to play. He wants to be on the field. But it's going to come down to the doctor's decision tomorrow to see if that bone has calcified. And for those of you that are loyal listeners, you know that I've had a shoulder injury. And those injuries, this injury in particular, that bone has to be healed 100%. And everybody's body heals differently. And so we're just waiting for that bone to calcify. There's no way to speed this process up. This is just something that's going on in his shoulder. Now, I know one of the things is, Evan will ask me, what is my gut feeling on this? I really don't know. I really don't know. He seems to be practicing without pain, but having a bone injury and waiting for it to calcify, there may be no pain there. There may be absolutely no pain. The bone may seem healed, but the injury has to get healed with that calcification. And so that's what they're looking for on that scan is what I'm thinking. Again, I'm no doctor, but that's all I can think of is that it is not calcified enough to risk further injury. And again, I was reading on NFL.com, I was reading through some of the discussions, Packer fans, Steeler fans, some Bear fans actually chimed in, and the Bear fans are saying, why play him to risk further injury to a guy that could end his career, coming from a Bears fan. And I give props to that, because there is that risk. If it is not calcified fully, he could risk further injury. That includes off-season rehab. That includes maybe getting a later start into training camp and possibly not being able to play again. I mean, those are things that we have to look at. So as much as I want Rodgers to play, I've got to be that person that is putting my faith in the medical staff that they are waiting until that collarbone is 100% healed. Do I think the Packers have a chance to win without Rodgers? Yes. Do their chances go up a lot when Rodgers is in? Absolutely. But again, too, we have to move on with Flynn right now, and that's where my gut feeling is telling me. That we're getting late in the week. I know that Rodgers is taking the reps. They're preparing Matt Flynn to play. But I had said this when the injury first happened, and I know we had a lot of optimistic fans. Evan was one of them, hoping that it would have been a 2 to 3 week, then it was a 3 to 4 week, then a 4 to 5 week recovery time. I had mentioned, and I hated to mention it when I was rambling, that shoulder injury to me, when I saw it, I thought it was going to be a 6 to 8 week injury. And that's about the time frame that we're falling into. And so we may not be able to have Rodgers again on Sunday. Now, if we look at the playoff scenario and going into this game, and like I said, we're going to move the full preview to tomorrow when Evan and I can have a full 30 minutes to go over the keys to the game. But let's look at the situation from both points. We all know the Packers win against the Steelers and beat the Bears. They're NFC North champions. The Bears, if they win both of their games, they're NFC North champions. So both the Bears and the Packers control their own fate. Now, the Bears are traveling to Philadelphia. And since tomorrow we're not going to be able to do an upset special, I am going to go out on a limb and say what I think. But I see Evan joining me, so I'm going to welcome Evan in, and we're going to finish up with about 15 minutes. Hey, Evan, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right. Just finished up the training, so
well,
apologize for not being here on the scheduled start time.
Hey, like I told the fans in the beginning, we both have professional work schedules, and we tried so hard because my schedule is crazy busy at 4 o'clock, and I have no time then. I wouldn't be able to do the show till like 9:30 tonight, and you had the training today, and we tried to make this work. So I was doing a little bit of the Aaron Rodgers, my thought on the injury, Evan, about the calcification of the bone, how we're waiting for that again. I told the fans that we'll do a full preview tomorrow, so I'm not going to get into the keys to the game. You probably heard me talking about the playoff scenario when you called in. the Bears they're holding their own fate in their hands. If they win both, they're the champions. If we win both, they're the champions. The Bears have a tough game in Philadelphia, though, and I know tomorrow we're not going to be able to do the upset special. And I know you and I didn't have a chance to do any pre-chat today, a little bit of texting, that was about it. But why don't we just talk about what we think about that Bears-Eagles game off the top of our head? I'm actually looking at it. I think the Eagles are going to win on Sunday. I think the Eagles are going to take care of the Bears, which would be great for the Packers, because then in some case, if we would lose, the Bears would be 8-7, we would be 7-7, and no matter what the Lions did at that point, if we won on the last week, we would still win the division. What's your thought on the Bears-Eagles game? Quickly, bud.
Well, looking at it, should be a very tough matchup for the Bears. You know, we've seen all year long that they've struggled to stop the run game. McCoy, very good running back. Should be able to gash them all game. They've been struggling to stop the pass a little bit lately. Nick Foles is, looking like a very good quarterback. He's protecting the football, and he's spreading the football too. And then Deshaun Jackson, he's coming off even though the Eagles lost, he's coming off a monster game from last week. So it's going to be a very tough matchup for the Bears. The Eagles should be able to move the Bears should be able to move the football a little bit against the Eagles. Marshall's playing great football. Jeffrey's playing outstanding. Forte's playing outstanding. So it should be a very good matchup, but I do think the Eagles end up winning it due to LaShawn McCoy, who can also catch the ball out of the backfield as well.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the biggest thing for me is, and I was telling the fans earlier, I was telling them too, I was trying to fill some time, and I said that you're going to Lambeau Field for the first time. You're all jacked up about that, and the forecast is calling for snow out there. Well, it's going to be snow in Philadelphia. And the Bears are the worst rushing defense in the NFL by yards per game. They're giving up 152.4 yards per game. Well, LaShawn McCoy, in my opinion, is going to be able to run all over that defense. And if they want to stack the box and stop McCoy, the way Foles has been playing, I think Foles will find Jackson. So I really believe, no matter what happens, that the Bears are not going to win on Sunday. So when we look at that scenario, this is still a huge game for the Packers. I mean, they still have to win both. Even if the Packers win and the Bears lose, the Packers still have to win on Sunday against the Bears to win the division. So the only good thing there is, with the Bears having such a tough game, it gives the Packers a little bit of hope if they would slip up against the Steelers. And before you got on, my biggest concern for Sunday, Evan, is that laundry list of injuries that's out there. That Packer injury list this week, as I was joking on Twitter and on the show in the beginning, that injury list is longer than some kid's Christmas list. And Johnny Jolly is actually, according to Mike McCarthy, has a significant injury that could be season-ending. What do you know anything else about the Jolly injury, bud?
I haven't really heard much about Jolly's injury. He says he'll be good to go. He said he's not going to be out for the year, but obviously players say one thing. It's ultimately up to the team doctors and what the team doctors think, what's in the best case for the individual athlete. And, that's what they're looking at right now, especially for number 12. Is what's in the best interest of him. And it can be frustrating as a fan, but when, I'm kind of going off topic here, but it's best when the team doctor who, is pretty much impartial is the one to step up and say, no, this isn't going to happen. But, Jolly says he should be good to go. I don't expect to see him, but, we were able to get by without Jolly for the entire second half against the Cowboys and did all right. So it'll be hard without him in there, but it should be fine.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a huge loss for us. I'm not saying we won't be fine, but, I remember I joked with you I didn't want to see Jolly dance. Well, you had said if he's making plays, we want to see him dance, and he was starting to make some plays for us. It always seems this year that somebody gets on a roll and they get hurt. just the way that it's going, and it's frustrating as a fan. But I'll go back and I'll kind of recap what I did in the beginning of the show and get your thoughts on this. The list is so long, but it really worries me, Evan, because of the injuries are going to take away some of our depth if these guys can't go. You've got Pickett, who was limited today, which means that he's injured. You got, of course, Jolly.
Yeah, but he's been limited pretty much all year, though.
So,
if you're able to look back on most of the practice reports for the past several weeks, on Thursday's practice, you're going to see both Mike Neal, which is another name I'm sure you saw in there, as no-go, and you're going to see Ryan Pickett on there quite frequently as limited participants on Thursday. So for Pickett particularly, I wouldn't look too much into it.
Well, that's good news for us that he'll most likely play. My thing is, and I had mentioned this, playing against Big Ben, it's going to take the second and third wave to get to the quarterback because he doesn't go down on the first hit. And so what that does is it tires out the defensive line, and if our depth is hurt because they're tweaked up or whatnot, that could be a long day for us because you've got Pickett, you've got Jolly, you've got Neal, and then you've got Perry and Wilson on there too. And granted, they may all go. But my concern is, what is that injury, and is it going to limit them knowing that they're going to have full motors on Sunday to take this guy down? Because even though the Steelers, and I threw this stat out, the Steelers have given up 41 sacks. And that ranks them 25th in the NFL. But you and I both know it's normally not one guy coming in and knocking Big Ben down. It's usually when he's extending the play and they're chasing him around. He tires out defensive lines. That's my concern is, with Ben there, is that defensive line going to be able to just maintain these things and get that pressure? So it just concerns me, Evan, because it's these small little tweaked injuries and, they start the game and then they can't go back in. Then our depth is hurt, and then we get tired out, especially if it snows. I've played sports in the snow before, and that snow just weighs on your legs. It's hard to get footing. You've got to exert extra energy to get a push. Hopefully it doesn't tire him out.
They looked at Reggie Bush with the Eagle game a couple weeks ago, and the pregame stuff, he slipped on the turf when he already had a hurt calf. He slipped on the turf and ended up missing the game.
Yeah, you never know when the conditions are that way. So, that was just a couple of things I was talking about with the fans. Hoping you were going to come in. I'm glad you came in. I always love chatting with you, bud. But we got about just under 7 minutes. I did move forward, but when we look at where we're going right now with the Packers, let's talk about. We haven't done this a lot. Cobb's back in practice. What's your gut tell you? I know he hasn't been cleared. Not going to be cleared this week. Not even probably next week. But let's say the Packers win the division. What's your gut feeling telling you? You think Cobb's going to come back in the postseason if the Packers make it?
I think he could. It's all about how quickly it takes him to get his legs back under him, his football conditioning. That's what I mean by when I say his legs back under him. Because he's been away from the game since about Ravens game, I believe, is the one he got hurt in. Yep. And that was back in October or end of September, one of the two. So he hasn't really done a lot of conditioning stuff, at all since that injury. And from what I had heard until recently, he was moving around the Packer locker room on a Segway, zooming around there on that. So it's going to probably take him a little bit to get his conditioning back. And obviously it won't happen this week. There is probably a slight chance he could, if he gets medically cleared, that's the big hurdle. There's a possibility that he could see some snaps against Chicago. I would not be surprised. But I think if he's not clear by the Chicago game, I don't think they play him at all in the playoffs because he hasn't been around for so long. There's going to be rust there. It's going to take him a while to get back into the swing of the game. And the guys that have been filling in for him, like Boykin and, Nelson's been filling in that slot. Quarles has really stepped up lately. They have a really good thing going for them right now at the receiver position. And, you throw a guy that hasn't been on the field since end of September, beginning of October, whenever that game was played, it could throw things out of whack. Because the offense, even with all, it's a concern when 12 comes back, the offense might, get out of the groove they're in a little bit. So I don't think they play Cobb if he doesn't play at all next week, or if he's not ready next week.
I can totally understand that. My thought is, even if he does come back and he's medically cleared, I don't see him going into a prominent role for exactly what you said. The conditioning won't be there. A lot of the timing won't be there. And, timing with Rodgers, too, that might be a key. The thing is, I think Rodgers will have enough, and he'll have his main weapon in Nelson there and James Jones. I mean, those two have worked together a lot. They understand each other. So maybe at first, I can't see that lasting too long with that rust, like we call him number 12.
I don't see it either.
With those two. Maybe a little bit with Boykin, maybe some with Quarles, but that'll just be enough to be able to, that'll just take some time. But his main two weapons will be there. Now, granted, people may argue, well, Cobb and Rodgers had a good thing going. They did, but now, like you said, you're going to be moving some other people out of place. I was thinking more along the lines, if he gets medically cleared, that the one thing we haven't seen is a lot of big multiple wide receiver sets, 4 or 5 wide receiver sets. Maybe they do just a couple of those plays to get Cobb in for a handful of snaps, maybe 6 to 8 plays a game where we can run 4 receivers wide, 5 receivers wide, because we haven't seen a lot of it since Cobb got hurt. And maybe that's something that they think about. Again, I'm not an NFL coach. I'm not on the staff. I don't know what their thinking is. So, but it'll be interesting to see how that injury progresses. If he plays at all. But as we're running the show down here, Evan, and like I said, tomorrow we'll definitely do Packer preview. But fill the listeners in. I know it's your first trip to Lambeau Field. How you feeling about that, bud? Give me some insight.
Well, I'm excited for it, but also at the same time, a little on the nervous side because, they're calling for anywhere from 5 to 7 inches of snow stretching from Racine to Green Bay. And, I'm not looking forward to making that drive. So, we'll see. Hopefully the snow holds off or it's cleared up by then, by the time it's, ready to head up there. But I'm excited for it. I've been there for Lambeau tours before. I've been there for family night, but this is the first, regular season game, game that means something that I'm going to be at. So I'm going to definitely check out Brett Barr's Steakhouse. I heard they have a really good, tailgate spread there, and we're just going to have a good time.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I've been in Lambeau Field many times, bud, and enjoy your experience. It is a wonderful experience in there.
90 seconds.
Now, are you gonna be crazy in your first game and take your shirt off and brave the elements with no shirt on?
Nah, I can't scar the fans with that.
How about a cheese head? You wearing a cheese head?
No, I probably won't have a cheese head on. I'll probably either get a skull cap for the game though, because it should be on the cold side of it. Going to be that much snow.
Yeah, you might want to cover your ears and get some hand and foot warmers, bud. I think back. I know we got a minute left, but I was at the playoff game when they held Barry Sanders to negative yards rushing. That is by far the coldest game I've ever been to.
Awesome.
Yeah, it wasn't awesome, bud. I actually, to be honest, I was miserable during that game.
Negative yardage, though.
Oh yeah, the game was. I mean, it was awesome after when we went out and celebrated because it was warm in the bar. But I'll tell you what, that game, I actually was miserable during that game. I could not get warm at all. Whatever I tried to do, blankets, hand warmers, feet warmers, it was terrible. But we will get together with the fans tomorrow, and I know we can't chat after, Evan, but we'll do it at 5 o'clock. Text me if that's not going to work. With that said, everyone, we will have Packer-Steeler preview tomorrow, and we will talk about the keys to the game and our predictions tomorrow on Friday. With that said, we'll see you at the next red light. Have a great night, everyone.